Yeah, you might have to go gentle with me actually, because I've got an ear infection in my right ear, and my left ear is messed up anyway, which is a ridiculous state of affairs for a music obsessive music journalist. So yeah, I'm a bit. If I We were just talking a little bit about age before we start recording, but
So,
if I have to
have you
ask
got one
you,
of those horn things that comes out your ear? What?
God, I really. It's a shit. I mean, there's so many things that have been improved by technological advances, but I feel like the fact that old men don't have those things anymore is
It's definitely a plus. No,
No,
it's a
I was going
negative.
to say it's a failure of society. Like monocles, right? We both wear glasses. Do you not think that we could rock a
No, a
monocle?
monocle would be good, but just for near sight. But it's funny, when I was a kid, there's a place called Bowl Street on Liverpool, and there was a shop there, and it used to have this chair in the window for sale, and it was a hearing aid chair. It was a very grand, looked like a throne, and it had two holes in it there. And loads of us we used to be walk past, we'd always say, "Look at that chair, is anyone ever going to buy that chair?" It was really good, but it was like a massive sort of throne armchair. And I don't know how it would have helped your hearing at all, but it had all like apertures in it. It's an amazing thing. I don't know if it was a joke or it was real or it was an oddity that someone had found and put in the window. It was an amazing thing.
Have you heard about this? While we're on the subject of Liverpool, have you heard about this street in Liverpool that people keep saying that there's like an intersection of another dimension?
I have never heard of that now.
It was actually there's a friend
Not
of mine.
Matthew Street.
That rings a bell. There's a friend of mine called Danny Robbins. He does a podcast called Uncanny, and the BBC recently adapted it as around Halloween, and it's a sort of like a skeptic stroke believer kind of debate show about the existence of the paranormal. And there was an episode where there were some people from Liverpool who were talking about there was a shop that they'd gone into, and when they'd gone into it, it had suddenly reverted to like Victorian times. And what
Wow.
was so interesting about this was that it like their stories had been corroborated by other people who'd seen them go into the shop. So like their stories, like they didn't know each other, and they both said the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, I
yeah,
believe in that stuff, actually. Because
do
I
you?
say in my book, actually, I don't know if you read my book, but there's a chapter about a haunted house that we lived in. And
Well, you
so
mentioned it the other day in Walthamstow.
yeah, I do believe in it a lot, really. Well, you can't believe in it a lot. You believe in it or you don't believe in it.
Yeah.
I believe in it. I do believe, I believe in all sorts of stuff, just positivity, negativity, that it has a massive effect. And I think that probably feeds into that, really.
It's interesting that I'm going to move away from the paranormal as much as I would like to talk to Ian Broudie about the paranormal for half an hour. But I feel like, because I have read the book, and I did go to the talk at the ever excellent E17 Rock and Roll Book Club last week.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I've been listening to loads of Lightning Seeds recently as well. So I feel like I've kind of spent quite a lot of time in your world.
Okay.
And I guess I kind of got. I mean, you are obviously enjoying a real, and deservedly so, enjoying a real kind of moment at the moment. And it kind of got me thinking a little bit about why there's been this kind of groundswell of love for what you do at the moment. And obviously, the book being excellent has got a big part to play in it, and the fact that you've always written really good songs. But do you think there's maybe something in the fact that everyone just thinks you're really bloody nice? Do you think that's
I'm
come?
not that nice, I've got to tell you. But no, do you know what? I think a lot of it is like Lightning Seeds. Whenever any band has its moments, and unless you're kind of, a couple of exceptions, you have your moments and then it fades. And then I think just after your moment, you're what used to be. So it's a bad, you're on a low. And I think at that point, a lot of things happened to me in my life and I lost interest in the idea of, I stopped really, and I didn't do anything for a while. And when I started again, it was kind of not, I don't know, I just didn't have I was in a period in my life where, which is funny to say, I would never think it could happen to me. But where I was just rubbish at everything. I couldn't think straight, couldn't organize, or set up a little studio for myself that was awful to work in, where I'd always been very good at that. Kind of just had a few people playing with me that I shouldn't have had. But, and everything in my life, actually, not just music, I don't know. And I think it was affected by a lot of negative stuff that happened to me, and I just was not happening. And then you kind of go through an arc, and then I started doing music again. I think when my brother killed himself, if I talk about that, I don't like to talk about it too much, but just in the context of that, I had this idea that I'm wasted my life and music isn't life, and you've got to have a good time in the moment, and I really tried to I thought, stop doing that. Forget that. That's frivolous nonsense, And it sort of took me full circle to a point where eventually, when my head straightened out a few years later, I thought, no, you've got to enjoy yourself and fulfill your life. You've got to do what you love. And I loved it. And sad as it might be, I'm happy in a studio sorting out someone's song and the bass drum. And you do want a life in parallel. You don't want it to just be, you don't want it to just be that, obviously. But I allowed it to come back into my life. And then that coincided with, there was a moment when a band called Deaf School from Liverpool, they were sort of reforming, and they were playing the Everyman Theatre. And they said to me, would you do, I know you don't do anything anymore, but fancy doing a couple of acoustic songs to open for us? And I thought, well, and I said to Riley, we're always playing around the house. Why don't we do that together? It'd be fun for you. You can get up on a stage. So he was terrified, and we got up and he really enjoyed it. And then I started doing a few gigs, and then it felt like, well, if we're doing gigs, I should try and be excellent again, not just rubbish. So I went through a period of the band not being so great, and then gradually the right people being in the band. And then Riley grew into a fantastic force within it. His guitar playing was great, and he manages me, and he's very bright in a way that I'm more OCD bumbling around. He's very bright, and he's not scared to open a letter like I am. I'll look at the letter for 2 weeks before I open it. He'll open it, sort of deal with it, and he's become a real force. So I think it's this funny arc, and at the same time, now it's a long time since we were. So we're not what was just been. We're something, and I think people often used to come to the shows and sort of say, wow, I never knew you did those. I knew every song. I didn't think I knew any of your songs. And I knew all. So it's almost like, because I wasn't that sort of dazzling a front man, I think people liked the tunes but didn't put it together. And I think over the last few years, it's like if we were a football team, we've been going up the divisions and we've become really good live. And it's funny because I was never very comfortable playing live back in the day. But now I feel like we're a really good live band, and I'm comfortable being the singer in that band. I mean, it took too long. It should have happened, 30 years ago. But and I think we've been out playing, and people have really reacted well. We've done a lot of git shows, and people have rediscovered the songs. And then, as you say, just various things, and maybe Glastonbury, and just a lot of stuff. And now the book. And a lot of stuff, I think people are like, oh, well, I didn't really know that. And I think when I used to do interviews, I was always very distrustful of the music press. I didn't have much respect for music journalists, sorry. And so I was very...
Not without reason in some
Well, I was
cases.
very guarded. I was very guarded. And lately, someone said to me the other day, when I was telling this, actually after I told the story about Pure in Walthamstow, they were like, it's amazing that story wasn't in articles and stuff like that. And I thought, I never used to say it, I never used to tell them anything really. Do you know what I mean? So I think with me being a bit older and a bit, I suppose you either care less when you're older or you're just more confident. I don't know which it is, but it's almost like this feels like the best moment It feels like, whereas I had to worry all the time in the 90s, we're far more in control of our own destiny now. And I love just turning up and playing songs, and it's just between you and an audience. And I'm much more comfortable talking about my life, really, and what happened.
Well, that's really interesting to me, because when Pete Selby said that he was doing a book with you, I was really surprised, because I guess that, like, even when I was younger, and this probably ties in a little bit with some of your frustrations with the music press, is even when I was a kid, I remember thinking I really like these songs, but like I don't really know this guy. Like, it almost felt like you were like, it didn't, like, the likenesses felt very different to other bands that I liked, because I was like, I just don't really know this guy, but the songs are amazing. But it's not like, it wasn't like your sort of personality was like just protruding from what you did. And then when I read the book, I was like, oh, there's a real, like, this guy's lived a real life, and it surprised me.
Well, I think, my energies were spent between working on other bands and myself. So it was really split. And I think you get to know a band because they play live, and of course I didn't play live till the third album. Yeah. Oh, sorry. And that's Riley saying, "Are you on your podcast?" I'm just telling.
It might be.
I'm on the podcast. I'm on it. Yeah, no, we're on it. Yeah, sorry. I've remembered. All right. Hiya, he said. All right, bye.
Hi, Riley. Good lad.
He must have messaged you, and he's like, wait. So he's in Spain at the minute, actually. What was I saying?
Do you need a reminder of where we are?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I was skirting around the fact that I was trying to
nondescript.
Well, it feels a bit rude saying that, really, but that's kind of, I don't know. You just seem, because the other thing I really thought when I was reading the book, and also when I was hearing you talk the other day, was I almost kind of felt a bit sorry for you in a way, because there was obviously this part. It seemed like there was this part of you that properly. You were talking about the brilliance of bands, right? Like, the Beatles, basically, the kids who'd been to school or they'd known each other as very young men, and they were a gang, and it felt like that was something that you wanted, but maybe that hasn't really been the Lightning Seed story until maybe recently.
Until now, yeah. No, I think that's kind of, in a way, that's very perceptive. That's kind of what I was saying before. Now the band does feel like we're, I mean, I've always tried to find people who played the songs with love. So no one is a session player. They're all people who've been in bands and who I've known for a while. Jim, since he was a kid, when his uncle played in Chris Sharrock played with us. Riley, obviously, all his life. Martin's done all the gigs since I started, pretty much. The core of it is, and we usually even, I just not really very rock and roll. I don't like road crews. I don't, so, we've always tried to have people around the band, even off stage, like young aspiring musicians who are teching for us, and then they go on to be in bands. And just tried this. The last few years, I have this thing in my whole life, really, where I only want to really work with people I know, or I think I would like to know. Do you know what I mean? And I try to limit everything to that in every aspect, really. And it's meant reconnecting with some people and some new people. But I think there's a really nice, I enjoy seeing everyone. I think I'm in a great moment, because I do enjoy pretty much everyone I work with.
Yeah, I think you're getting let me start that sentence again. I think you're getting dangerously close to national treasure status.
Well, that would be a turn up for the books, wouldn't it? I think I remember what you were saying about people being in gangs and stuff like that. I suppose because I was a producer, it diverted me, so my gang was the Bunnymen. Yeah. And to a degree still is. If I'm in a room with Ian or with Will even though they're not keen on that sometimes on being in a room together, you know, I instantly, it's like extended family. Same with the choral. It's like extended family,
Yeah.
you know. So I've kind of switched around a little bit, but I think, you know, the idea of kind of, I've hit a bit of a block there, but I've forgotten what I was going to
No,
say.
I know what
But
you're saying. It's almost like, I remember when I was in my band, I liked the people that was in my band, but we were based up in Sunderland. But when we would do gigs with like the Future Heads, who were really good friends, or other bands that were kind of around, would almost be that I kind of, you know, my band was very much my thing, and it was like I almost kind of lived out my sort of monkey's fantasies of what I thought a band should be like via other bands. It sounds a bit like that's what you're saying.
yeah, yeah, and I think, you know, so whereas I didn't have a gang, I kind of had loads of gangs, really. I mean, it's funny because Eric's, that club that I went to as a kid, still, if I see someone from Eric's, like if I'm at a book signing and someone comes, I'm like, there's an instant affinity. You know, some things in your life, you're in it together, and somehow that's just a moment when you're in it together. And everyone from that time, you kind of just you know, it's just, there's something, and there's a lot of that with certain bands, you know, that I feel, you know, that because I think when I was producing, it was like I joined the band for a while. Really, that was my approach. There was no division. I wasn't half trying. I was living and breathing that music, that thing, and it was kind of all or nothing for me. You know, which, as I say in the book, is kind of bad and good. You know what I mean? Depending who you're working with, really. You know, but there was no boundary. You know.
Just so I've sort of got like the timeline right, the period when you say you kind of retreat from music, what years are you saying?
I wonder. I'm not very good with that stuff, but I suppose it'd be around 2001. I mean, I'd lost concentration when we made the Tilt album.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of songs on there that could have been really great, but I think I'd gone through some loss and divorce. And the divorce in my life was, or separation, not divorce. It was a real blow for me, really. You know, I mean, not it just happened. You know, what I mean, I'm going into the detail of it. There wasn't any dramatic thing, but it really affected me because I think being in a band and being very happy, I don't know, yeah, or being in a happy situation, you're in a bubble, really. Do you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, when the bubble of your life and the bubble of your band burst at the same time, it's kind of like, whoa, you know, it's a lot to take in. I hate talking about this because it makes me sound like I'm going, oh, I'm so, you know, and everyone has their problems. Everyone has their problems and everyone has to deal with life. And maybe I'm just not as good at it, you know, as some people. But that period around then, it just felt like leading up to me working with the choral, those few years. And then I started doing the choral. And in a way, that was, looking at it now, probably a path back to music, because they were so young. So James, you know, Skelly or Nick, they used to come and stay in my flat, and I'd play them CDs, and they'd borrow CDs, and it was almost like with Riley when you go in, listen, spot, you know, I mean, you know, you're showing them your music, not your music, but the music you love.
Yeah.
And things they might not have heard. And then your appetite for it comes back as well while you're showing it to them, and you start. And then that, for me, then I started getting really into music, but wasn't making any particularly. And I made, you know, Tales Told, the solo record, and then an album that could have been good, but my concentration was just gone. I couldn't think straight, you know.
Oh, I won't hear a word against Tales Told, Ian.
No, it was more the one after. Tales Told I really liked. I did it fairly quickly, and it's a lot of live playing, and it was mainly in downtime, you know, during the choral sessions sort of thing, while things were set up in the studio. So it was kind of, the choral and the Zootons generally just played on. I'd show them the song. We'd spend 2 hours. We'd put it down, and then I'd work on it a bit in the following week. You know what I mean? So it was very. I didn't even know if I was making, what I was making. I just wanted to make some music that was a bit different and not the Lightning Seeds.
Yeah.
So the kind of rule on that was sort of everything you do with the Lightning Seeds, do the opposite. No, just real instruments, just guitars, no programming. Don't be, because I think with Lightning Seeds earlier on, I was quite scared really. So I used to put so much on it that it was hard for the voice to come through. So it became much more of a personal album. I didn't have to shout over the top of it all.
Yeah, well, the context of everything you're talking about, actually, I mean, there is an argument that that record is you kind of poking around, trying to find a way forward, really.
And I think I did a few gigs around that, and I was planning to do more, and then I lost my sister and my brother, so it just stopped me doing it. So in a way, that was the start of getting back, and it was just kind of cut away, really.
I'm deliberately not asking about the tragedy in your life because you said you don't like talking about it, but
it comes into it, obviously, doesn't it? Yeah.
I just want to be a human being and say I'm sorry that you went through that. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it was a lot all at once. But like I say, everyone's got stuff happens to everyone, really.
I mean, unquestionably, you mentioned OCD before. I'm actually diagnosed OCD. I'm actually clinically, I have OCD, and if I was speaking to anyone else, I would have pulled you up on that. I think I would have been like, "Oh, actually, OCD. It's not an adjective." But yeah, life, man. It's a heavy thing.
It is, and I haven't got OCD. I don't think it's just in certain areas. I don't really know what but I just feel. We don't want to go into all that, do we? But I just. Like with songs, if they're not in the right thing, I physically can't stand it.
Oh yeah,
I have to do it a certain way. So I don't know if that's OCD. It's probably something else.
No, I mean, no. I used to. I mean, I think it's like obsessive compulsive. That's what we always say. People with OCD, we always say, like people have obsessive compulsive traits. It's when the D is added, when the disorder is added, and actually that's
the bit
problems arise.
Right.
But I think everyone from, I don't know, Joe Meek to Phil Spector had a degree of obsessive compulsive. That's
100%, yeah.
I think you kind of have to, really. I'm slightly loath to ask this, to be honest, because Three Lions must have been a bit of a poison chalice. Like, on one hand, you're a very seemingly reluctant, very famous person with a beloved, culturally relevant song you've written, but it must have been a bit weird that. And I know you love football, and so do I, but it's a bit of a beast that won't die.
Well, I think if like there's music business or music, and there's show business, and there's music culture, and there's popular culture, and that sort of blurs the line between where you are. Do you know what I mean? And so, when it's got the force of football, it's just such an enormous thing, and in the end, I'm very proud of Three Lions. But as I've said about music, people take the music and change it and make of it what they want and read what they want to read, and what it represents changes over the years. So, and Three Lions has been like that. It's been from pillar to post, and it's been used by things. Not, it's become, and Coming Home has become not about the competition coming, but about winning a trophy. And I think that's quite cool. I love it, the fact that the music just does stuff. You're not in control. It's not yours anymore.
Yeah.
And it changes and it adapts to what's happening, and people adapt it, So I wouldn't call it a poison chalice. I would call it, a complicated relationship between me and the song.
That's a better way of putting it. Yeah.
And I'm very glad I did it, very proud of it, but I've only become sort of easy with it. My relationship is only lately, the last few years, where it is, it's separate. But loads of, like see a lot of young guys at the gigs, and they weren't born when Three Lines came out, and they heard it in 2020.
Yeah.
And discovered us via that on Spotify. And so, you can't, it's the word, serendipity just carries on from the creation of the music, when it's released, what happens afterwards, and it's all just bouncing around. And really, for me now, it's cool. It feels separate. I play it when I think it's appropriate, and I don't when I don't think it's appropriate.
I thought it was really interesting at Walthamstow when you were saying that thing about how you were basically not trying to write a football song, because I find it interesting that, in my opinion, the two times that England as an organisation have got it right, World in Motion and Three Lions, on both occasions, it's like the first one is very clubby, what New Order do.
The New Order one is very much a football song. It's got the team in the video.
Yeah, well,
they're going England.
Yeah,
it's very much a laddie thing. I actually,
do you think
at the time I loved that record, but one of the things I wanted to do was not make a record anything like that.
Well, no, I can see that, because the thing with yours, and I was surprised you didn't say this in Walthamstow, is that it was so much melancholy. Like it's like you tap into the eternal disappointment of following our national football team. Whereas I always
generally most football team. I mean, as a football fan,
you're a Liverpool fan. You can't say that.
No, I think the strongest. It's a bit like, say, if you get a review and you get 10 good reviews, it's the bad one you focus on. I think it's a bit like that as a football fan. Do you know what I mean? It's the pain that pulls you together with the other fans, and the kind of, I don't know, in some ways it's the journey, isn't it? You know what I mean? And the journey's always, it's always kind of, it's great the moment when you win, but it's short-lived in a way, because then you're straight back to next season,
I just think it's funny. I interviewed Peter Hutton the other day, and he was talking about, it being difficult being a Liverpool fan, and I'm a Doncaster Rovers fan, so I was a little bit like, come on now, you know what I mean? You've enjoyed some wonderful days, Peter. I can't remember the last time I had a good time watching Doncaster, but anyway, why do you, speaking of Liverpool though, why, if it, maybe this is something a bit woo-woo or something in the cosmos, but the other guy I interviewed recently was Will from the Bunnymen, and obviously he's got the second volume of his book out, and there's the I try to remember someone else from your way on who's just written a book.
Paul Simpson.
That's right, yeah. So, I mean, it feels like that kind of Eric's early Liverpool, Courtney Love knocking around. I knew those stories to a degree, but what do you think's happened to the cosmos that all those books have kind of arrived at the same time?
Yeah, it's a strange one. I think, I mean, it was a very quick process for me, because I wasn't trying to write, my autobiography. I just had stories and anecdotes that people kept saying to me, you should put them down, because those times are gone, and that, and I'm always about that with my songs, about things not being lost and worrying about things, just if you don't, so it was partly that. And it was meant to be just a series of anecdotes. And then when I did the audio book and I was reading it, I was like, oh, it's a lot of personal stuff crept in here, on the phone to Riley. I need to take all this out, He was like, it's printed, so, no good. I was like, well, why didn't I do the audio book before they printed it? It's like, probably for this reason. Yeah. So I was kind of surprised at how much other stuff had kind of gone in there. So it was a fairly, it was 6 or 7 months from deciding to do it And then it was quite just serendipitous. Pete had just asked at the same time as I was thinking, oh, maybe I should. And then it was done fairly quickly, you know. And I didn't, you know, it wasn't, and I never, you know, it's not in chronological. So it was never meant to be, this is who I am completely. And it ended up a bit more like that. Now I look at it, I'm like, oh, you know, it pretty much, it's ended up much more of an autobiography than I thought it would. But I think Paul was writing his book for years. I seem to remember. You know, he was always like, he was writing a book, and I don't, you know, so it's probably a different thing for him. And Will, obviously, it's volume 3 soon, so it's very much Will's life, not just the Bunnymen. It's, you know, it's his life really, you know, and our lives sort of intersect. And I think there's some crossover in the book, and you know, to a degree. I don't know. I think one of the reasons that Paul's book is out now is that he's notoriously could go on forever, probably writing it. And then I think he said, oh, you know, I've got to get this finished, you know, like, because, you know, almost it spurred him on to finish it, I think, you know what I mean? So, which is a good thing, I think, because I'm sure it'd be a great read. You know, so I think maybe, you know, maybe there was something in the fact that Will had done one that spurred me on to think maybe I should do one. I don't think so, really, you know, but maybe.
It's just interesting to me that, you know, I'm 43, so when I was growing up and learning about music, I mean, just the Manchester story, it was just rammed home so much, and the Liverpool story, you know, sort of post Merseybeat, like a lot less so. And it's just interesting that, I don't know, it almost feels like that period of time is kind of getting its dues.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I always see these books on Erics and documentaries on Erics, and they're always a load of bollocks, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? It's like, I think I saw one coming out now, and I saw a few bits of it, because I think they wanted me to maybe be interviewed for an out, and they sent me a few bits. I just thought, I don't want to be in that, you know what I mean? It's a load of bollocks. So, you know, I suppose that's just me, but it's just everyone's got their own, like Eric's, it was probably many things to many people. So I shouldn't say it's a load of bollocks. It's just, I think there was a play about it at some point. You know, I don't know. It's weird, really. But for me, it was a life-changing kind of thing. And I'd get in there in the afternoon. We'd rehearse in there, I'd do the loading. Sometimes I'd DJ. We'd do the load out at the end of the night, you know, because we were sort of based in there and our equipment was stored there and Roger managed us. So for a period of time, it was just like I was every day in there, you know, and every day I'd go to Matthew Street before that. And it was very much, it wasn't a Saturday night out, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It was much more, it wasn't like that for me. It was much more than just a Saturday night out.
Yeah, no, I that comes across. It's weird though, isn't it? Because it was obviously like a life change. The things that happened within that space were obviously life changing for so many people who went. But I interviewed Andy McCluskey recently, and there's a really good OMD documentary where they go back to Eric's, and it's like they're sort of walking around, and you know, he's saying, "Oh, I remember talking to this person here," and you know this, but at the same time, they're basically kind of stood in a storeroom, you know. So it's like ultimately these places are just bricks and mortar. Like what happens within them is magic, and I'm not sure that totally comes across in the documentary format, you know. But it's a hard thing. Magic, as you know, as someone who's been obsessed with music all their life, magic's a hard thing to grapple with.
Yeah, and you know, within that situation, you know, everyone has a certain set of people that they, you know, you might meet someone who you never spoke to, who went to something that you went to all the time. You know, we never spoke, you know what I mean? It's like, so there's little sets within that. So, you know, I was in my little set of people, and, you know, I'm sure everyone, you know, all the experiences that people have there are as valid as each other's, really, you know what I mean?
Listen, I feel like I've kept you a little bit longer than I said that I would. Tell me
That's
what,
all right.
you just announced a tour for next year, right?
Yeah, so it's 35 years of the Lightning Seeds next year, which is weird. I mean, it's not that weird when I consider it was like 40 years ago I was doing the funny man. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, well, maybe long. But yeah, no, 35 years. And it's sort of coincided with the book. We were not planned really, but it's kind of coincided with that. And we just want to do something quite special for that year. We're in a really good moment. So we've just announced a tour for next November, December. And, we're going to do all the songs that everyone loves and all that and make it quite a big tour. I think it'll be a big party. And hopefully that'll be great. And then through the year, going to do something for Record Store Day and re-release a couple of the albums, a couple that weren't on vinyl and a couple that have just not been out for ages. We're going to do some coloured vinyl releases of that with Sony. And I'm going to do 3. I don't really want to do an album, but I think 3 new songs to come out various times in next year, culminating in the compilation and the tour at the end of the year.
You don't mean not do another album again, though, right?
I don't know. Right now, I feel like albums are funny things. People, it's the era of the song and Spotify and the song. Do you know what I mean? And then I don't mean I'm not going to record anymore. I certainly don't mean that. But I do like the idea of. I loved when the Beta Band did 3 EPs and then it became the album together. And yeah, do you know what I mean? There's a certain freedom in that. And sometimes the idea of an album can be daunting. Do you know what I mean? It can be, can be a little bit daunting. And I think I'd like to. I mean, never seen it. I'd just like to see what happens. And also, by the end of the tour next year, I'll be pushing 67. So, I don't know if that will have any effect or not, really,
On the subject of albums, what's the Zootons record like?
It's a good album. I mean, I think the Zootons are a great band, and I think a bit like myself, it's quite hard making an album after you haven't made one for so long. And I think it sounds really good. But I hope also that it's the path to another one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes I'm hoping anyway, because when I'm doing these tracks that I'm halfway through now, I just feel more in the swing of it than I felt doing the last album.
Yeah, no, good band. I pretty much just said that because I'm desperate to hear it, and also because the manager said that they would send me it to hear, and if he hears this, maybe it will guilt him into getting on with sending me it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ian, listen, it's been so nice to speak to you. I've really enjoyed it. I love the book, and I'm definitely going to come and join in with your celebrations next year. So,
okay, great.
Thank you so much for your
well,
time.
That's nice to talk to you, and nice to to do this. So, thanks very much for taking the time.
Amazing, man. Take care, dude. See you,
Yeah,
man.
bye.
Bye.